I just want to start out by saying this is Who Am I, a podcast where we're going to interview top hackers and experts in infosec. And today I have Tony Gore. He's a hacker and researcher. He's a top 10 MSRC. It's a Microsoft bounty program, basically, that we're going to talk about a little later. And he is currently working at Secureworks. So hello, Tony. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And as you know, one of the things that I really want to do with this show is get into the background of hackers. So I'm really personally fascinated by, how did people get into hacking, right? It's not something that is kind of a typical job. I guess it's becoming more so now, right? It's becoming more mainstream, but you and I are a little older. And when we were getting into this, it was less mainstream, right? And there was less of a predefined path. And I know when I first started hacking, I did not know that you could do it as a career at all.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't seeking to hack as something that I thought I could turn into a profession. I was just hacking because, I don't know, because it interested me. I was curious. It's like, that's what happened when you gave me a computer, right? It's like, you give me a console and I start doing things that are unexpected, right? So that was kind of my experience. I'm interested in your experience and, like, first off, just how did you even begin to hack at all? Like, when you first remember getting into computers and you first started like hacking, what was that? Where do you know where that came from, and what kind of inspired you there?
Yeah, I have a non-standard path, I guess. I was basically in high school. I was partying all the time. My grades weren't that great. I wasn't doing a good thing, and then I when I graduated high school, I was like, I need to get my life together. So I joined the Marine Corps, and when I joined the Marine Corps, I was I joined as a field radio operator, and learned how to do tech stuff with radios and how to encrypt radio signals. And I know you were in the military as well. You were in the Army, and I don't know if we had kind of like Vietnam era stuff when I was in. And like Desert Storm level old stuff.
Yeah.
One of the radios that we had was a satellite radio, which you had to program like a handheld computer to get any kind of a connection to the satellite and connection to the remote teams or the remote units that you were in the zone with, right, or in the area with. And so I did my enlistment. I got out in 2011, and I basically had to start over because radio operator skill sets don't translate very well to civilian life. So I had to basically start over from scratch. I started going to school on a GI Bill, and got my associate's degree, and met my wife in the process. And it was about the time that I was about to graduate with my associate's degree that the OPM hack happened. The Chinese
yes,
hack.
I remember. Yeah, I got a letter about that. Been impacted.
Yeah. So the OPM, the Office of Professional Management, is like an FBI office that stores all of the classification questionnaires. Like if you're going to get a secret clearance, you have to
like a SF-86.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have to put your whole life into there, basically. Yeah.
And so all that stuff is stored at the Office of Professional Management, and Chinese hackers had stolen that. And I basically read that sheet from the government saying like, hey, we've been hacked, or you have credit monitoring services going on now because of this whatever reason. And I'm like, how did that happen? Like how does what has to happen for a group of people to hack a network? And that's kind of what started the interest. And at the same time, my wife and I were like, okay, we need to start thinking about life, and we had a daughter at the time. We have a daughter, but we just had our daughter at the time. And so we're like, we need to look for employment, we need to look for work, we need to get our bachelor's degrees, how that whole process going. And one of the things that I thought of was like, hey, maybe I can call the FBI or the NSA or the CIA or something like a 3-letter agency and work off my 20-year pension, right? I've got 4 years, in the military, 8 years in the military. I can work on my pension in the government. And so I called the FBI recruiter and was like, hey, I'm working towards my bachelor's degree. What kind of degrees are you guys looking for? And his immediate response was, do not go after any kind of legal, like, don't be a lawyer, don't be a cop. We've got too many of that. What we're looking for is people that are fluent in cybersecurity, fluent in like Arabic studies or Arabic culture, speaking Arabic. And again, this is like 2011, 2012. We're still in
so we still got Afghanistan war,
exactly,
going and all that. Sure,
yeah, and so with the OPM hack and what the FBI recruiter had said about cybersecurity getting into the field, we started digging into the cybersecurity space. Like what's the average pay like? What's the expanse of how is there going to be longevity in this career for a long time? That's my wife back there. And we looked at all this and looked at my military background and was like, hey, the cybersecurity could be something that I could get into and pursue and be potentially good at. 2015, I started going to school for my bachelor's degree, and then met up with the school's cybersecurity club and just participated in everything that I could get my hands on, every competition, everything. And that's how I started learning more about hacking, and that led to everything else, right? So 8 years ago, I was a bouncer in bars in Chicagoland, and now I'm doing research and all of this stuff. It's a little bit different path.
That's cool. So there's a few different things that really fascinates me about that. So first of all, can you mention the school that you were going to that had the cybersecurity club? Because that's very interesting that they had one back then.
Yeah, DeVry University, actually.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I know it took a while, it seems like, for universities and colleges to start to have programs like that. So that's cool that they had one back then. Yeah, that's very interesting. And then also the military background. I have a military background as well, as you know. What's funny, I did weather forecasting. Like when I was in the military, has nothing to do with anything I do now. But also when I got out, it was the same sort of thing. I was like, well, I mean, I guess I could go do this in the civilian world, but it's pretty limited opportunities, actually. I think most people end up working at like an airport.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't really want to do that. I'll go figure something out. So I went to college and all that. But, another thing interesting to me about that is when I worked at the Pentagon for a short time. And while I was there, I met I was working with Marines, actually. And I was working with Marines in cybersecurity. This is 2017, I think, when I first got there, maybe 2016. And at the time, I was learning. I was like, how did you guys all get into cybersecurity specifically? And almost all of them came from radio.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. So that's. I thought that was very cool when you brought that up, because when they told me that, I was like, radio? What? Yeah. Why did they take a bunch of radio guys and make them? Women too. There was I had some women that were in the cybersecurity section with me as well, so I should say that. But I was like, why did they take everybody from radio specifically? But I guess there must be something there, that translates well. And it's just even funny for me now to hear that from you, because at the time I was like, I don't get it. Why is everybody from radio? So that's funny. Yeah, very cool. So I guess, to add on to that is, and it's a similar path to mine, I should say too. Same thing with high school. It was like partying and all this, and kind of figured it out later, right? And at some point figured out I could do this professionally. But To dig into that a little more, you kind of explained how you came to cybersecurity and all that. How did you come to focus specifically on hacking? I mean, you could have become like a blue teamer, or you could have done, in fonts and reverse engineering, or worked in a SOC or whatever. How did you come to focus on hacking, and maybe why, right? Like, was there something that for you is that, made that what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So the tail end of my school, I'm maybe like 6 months away from graduating. I get employed by Secureworks. I'm still in school. I'm finishing my degree while working in the SOC for Secureworks. And I get invited to a Chicago conference called ThoughtCon.
Oh yeah.
And we go to the conference, and I'm there. I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm hanging out with people that I know, people I go to school with, people that I work with. And there's a guy there who works for SANS, who's looking to basically talk to people at the conference. And we're talking about the military. He was in the Army, and we're BSing back and forth and having a good conversation. And that conversation goes on for like 3 or 4 hours, and then he leaves, and then comes and finds me at the very end of the day to give me this a subscription to SANS NetWars, which is a
Cool.
5-level competition, basically, where like level 1 it's more what do you know, answer questions. Level 2 is you have this environment, you have to go hack, like you have to log into a system and cat files or print files or move files or whatever. You just kind of go
Sure.
through it.
Sort of like a CTF or something.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but level
Okay.
1 goes from like Jeopardy, the trivia kind of questionnaire, right? Level 5 is you're going head to head with other hackers, and you have to hack their system that they've hardened, and they have to hack your system that you've hardened.
Oh, I love
And
that.
yeah, and I got my ass handed to me. I was not prepared for what happened, but I learned a lot in the process. Right, I made it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, made their leaderboard, and so shortly after that, my manager at the SOC was giving out certifications, not giving out certifications, was basically saying like, hey, you've earned the ability to take this certification, so we're
Sure.
going to give you that kind of thing, right? And it was the eLearn Security Junior Pen Testing Cert.
Oh
and,
yeah,
and
sure.
so that was very, very like very beginner entry level into OSCP kind of material, and I did well on that. I passed that exam. I got the certification. I did all the studying for it. And then it was right around that time that I realized, like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to learn how to hack. I want to learn how to be. I want to put the bad guy hat on and do bad guy shit and be a good guy, bad guy stuff, right? The So after that, I had to take out a loan to pay for my OSCP. I paid for my OSCP that way, passed it, and then applied for the Secureworks adversary group. And I got hired on as a junior pen tester over there and kind of worked my way up, started getting other certifications, and then moved from the adversary group over to the counter threat unit, where I do research on Azure and Microsoft exploits. So.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that as well, because I mean, you're one of the experts in the space, and I mean, really, I've seen a lot of your work in that area, and it's top notch. So I'm really looking forward to talking about that as well. But that is really interesting. That's cool, because I mean, you went to a conference, and that sort of started this all off down this path to hacking. I think that's really cool. I think, especially because I know that it used to be, at least I think, that there was more emphasis at a lot of employers about sending people to conferences, and And I feel like maybe that's dropped off a little bit over the last few years. And you know, I understand money crunch and COVID happened and stuff like that. So I understand, but I just would like to reemphasize how important I think that is for the community. I just think it's really important, and I would like to see a resurgence of that kind of mentality at a lot of these organizations of, hey, we need to get our people out to these conferences. It's important. I think sometimes, you know, I've heard some higher level managers kind of have this idea that, oh, they're just going to go there and party or whatever, you know. And hey, we do party, right? Yeah. At conferences. It's always a good time. You're with other hackers and people in infosec. But I think that kind of misses a lot of the benefit there. And I think the benefit is the interactions with other people, right? Just like you had somebody, you found some common ground with someone, and, you know, it ended up like changing your whole career path, right? Yeah. In a way that's worked out really positive for you. So just wanted to bring that up. Another thing that I wanted to mention here is, like, you mentioned using the GI Bill to go to school. Something that I really benefited from was when I decided to seek, you know, hacking professionally. I didn't really know how to get into it. I needed training. I had done some hacking in the past, but I wasn't doing it professionally. I wasn't up on, you know, all the modern techniques and everything. I knew I needed to brush up, and I was looking for ways to get training. And I remember I contacted a university to ask about a master's program. And at the time, they actually, you know, once they found out I was a veteran, they actually directed me to this program. It was, I want to say it was a combined like VA and DHS program, because it was like a DHS initiative to fill what they called the cyber gap. You know, remember years ago, there was this discussion about the cyber gap, right? We got to fill the cyber gap. We don't have enough people in cyber. And this was like a national security concern, right? And so what they wanted to do was give veterans an opportunity to get training in cybersecurity, to help fill that gap that we had as a nation, and also to help out veterans who maybe were struggling or hadn't found a career path or something like that. And that was me, right? And so I got into this program. I want to give a big shout out here to Hire Our Heroes. I mean, changed my life. That I was given opportunities. And one of the things that they did back then, I'm sure you can still do this, is I got access. Once I got verified as a veteran, and my ID verified and everything, I was actually given access to something called Fed VTE, which is a training platform that is used by the federal government, by multiple agencies, to provide training to people in the federal government. And that could be for the DoD, I think, is probably one of the biggest ones that uses it. But it's, you know, a lot of on-demand training that you can go take. And I got access to that, you know, just as a veteran, and I was able to do that stuff at home, you know, at my own pace. And it was awesome. I mean, it was just so much training that I was able to go through. I was just like doing everything because I didn't know, you know, what to focus on or what I wanted to necessarily do. So I was like taking every training on there. But I just wanted to give a shout out to, you know, the VA and Hire Our Heroes and the DHS for setting up those programs, providing those programs to veterans like myself, like yourself, and other people that we know to help, you know, get us transitioned into a career. And I know that Hire Our Heroes still exists and is doing good work. I think all those programs that I mentioned still exist. So if anybody out there is a veteran and is, you know, you don't like your current job, you're interested in cybersecurity, like, I would start there, right? I would start looking into these programs that are set up to get people cross-skilled or upskilled into cybersecurity. So just, you know, wanted to bring that up. It's something that I really benefited from, and it sounds like you got some VA benefits that helped you out along the way too. So, and thank you for your service, Tony, as well.
Thank you.
You know, always appreciated. So, thank you so much for going over your background. It's super interesting. like I said, I feel like we touched on a bunch of stuff about, you know, uh, going to school for this stuff, going to conferences and the benefits there, some of the VA programs and different training programs. SANS, I think, I'm a big fan of SANS. People know I probably know I've done some, um, SANS podcasts and talks and stuff like that. So I definitely, big fan of SANS as well. That's cool that I didn't know about their Net War program, or I'd heard of it, right? But I didn't know a lot about it. So that's also really cool. Don't worry about it, Tyler.
Okay, yeah, I was like, shit. Hey,
So,
get out.
yeah, no worries, man.
Get out.
So I want to get into your current work. Like I said, you are, I consider you an expert in hacking Azure, finding vulnerabilities in Azure. You're one of the people who's out there that is making Azure safer, right? Making it a safer platform for companies and even the government to use, right? So very cool stuff. I'm going to actually go ahead and share my screen here because I wanted to highlight something about this and about your work in this area. So let's pull this up real quick. So this is the MSRC 2023 Q4 top 10 list. And you see Tony Gore right here, number 8 on the list. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I thought this was just awesome. It's not easy to make this list, right? I mean, this is like a global competition, basically. I mean, it's incredibly competitive, and obviously, Microsoft has tons of resources at their disposal to secure Azure, and so it's very difficult. It's not easy to find bugs in something like this, right? And I think that it's so important that you do because when you find a bug in a particular piece of software, the impact is kind of measured a lot by, well, how many people are using this software? How many organizations are using this software, right? So we see some bugs where people freak out because it's like, oh, everybody, is using this software, like the most recent, like XZ, or right, it's like, oh no, this affects like all these Linux distributions and potentially Mac and potentially WSL and all this stuff. So it feels like a big deal because it affects potentially so many systems and so many organizations, right? And that's how I feel about cloud vulnerabilities, right? It's like, a lot of organizations are using Azure, right? And so when you find something in Azure, it doesn't affect just one organization. It affects a lot, right? It affects Microsoft directly, and it affects all of their Azure customers and clients, right? So just wanted to bring that up. And I was curious about this MSRC program. So I'm not super familiar with this. One of the things I was curious about is, I see it's like a points-based scoring system for making the top 10.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about is, did you get paid bounties
So
or
for
any submissions for this?
all of the points listed here in this table, I did not get bounty for any of them. The targets that I had found were actually out of scope, out of bounds, right? So they MSRC knows who a lot of us are. We have like ongoing conversations with MSRC,
Sure.
as goes. So they know we're not trying to be like malicious or try to be harmful towards Microsoft.
Yeah, you got like safe haven, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so it basically, I found a bunch of vulnerabilities that were considered out of scope because they weren't directly tied to an Azure resource or an in-scope Azure product like
Got it.
ML, Machine Learning Studio, or Compute, or app registration, any that kind of stuff. So it was they accepted the vulnerability, but they said it was an out of scope vulnerability, so that disqualified me from making bounty for it. But I did earn the points towards placing in the quarterly leaderboard. Another thing to mention about the leaderboard is that every year between July and August, it's the third quarter. It's the third quarter of the year. They do their big competition. It's your MSRC top 100 researchers, where the top 100 researchers get like swag and invites to conferences and
Cool.
specialized stuff because you're a top performer in the bug bounty program.
Sure. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So this was more of a recognition thing for you, right?
Yeah.
You didn't get a financial reward, but you got recognition. Very interesting, and that was just because they were out of scope. So that's cool. But it's cool that you were able to still report those issues. They took that submission. They didn't just say it's out of scope. We don't want to hear about it, right? That's always good. I like that when an organization still is willing to look at that information and doesn't just write it off as out of scope. So that's cool, very cool. And then, but you do earn bounties. You participate in other bug bounty programs. You've earned financial rewards in bug bounty programs in the past. Sure. So, when you're dealing with Microsoft and Azure, do they take for financial rewarded bounties? Are they taking those through a platform like HackerOne or BugCrowd, or do they take their own submissions directly?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I also have done bug hunting with Google Cloud Platform, and Google Cloud has their own internal system that you work with to get paid for the bounties that you work. Microsoft they have worked with HackerOne. They have worked with BugCrowd. Their current payment provider is Integrity. And that's who you basically set up an account with an Integrity. You perform your hunting, your vulnerability hunting on the Azure platform. If you find a vulnerability, you submit it to MSRC. If MSRC says it's in scope and it's valid, then they will pay you through the Integrity platform.
Interesting. Okay, so that's kind of a different situation than what I've encountered before. A lot of times like HackerOne and BugCrowd, it's kind of all housed within that platform, right? You actually submit through that platform. But with this, it sounds like you are submitting directly to MSRC.
Correct.
But then they're using Integrity, was it?
Correct. Yep. Integrity.
Integrity as like a payment provider.
Exactly. Yeah.
Facilitate the reward. Okay. Cool. Interesting. Good to know. A little bit different. Cool. So, and before I move, I'm going to move on to your and I think I just turned my tracking on. Anyway, so I'm going to move on to like some of your specific Azure research. But before I get to that, if you don't mind sharing with us, what are some of the larger financial reward bounties that you achieved against any platform, not necessarily Azure, right?
Yeah. So I do bug bounty work with Synac. I work HackerOne targets. I work BugCrowd targets, and I work Integrity targets as well.
You're getting after it.
I've been trying. Yeah, it's as much as I can get, right? And the platforms so Synac is to answer your question, the highest paying bounties you're going to get working with Microsoft or GCP or AWS through HackerOne or with the larger platforms, right? The larger bug bounty platforms. But those bounties take time, right? And so I might submit a vulnerability today that doesn't get fixed for another 6 months, and I don't get paid until the fix is implemented, and I have to wait that 6 months to get the bounty award. It's not like that everywhere, but in some cases it is like that. Sure. Platforms like Synac are really interesting because they do smaller payments. Like I think the highest you can get is $3,000, $5,000 bounty. But you get paid within 24 hours, 48 hours of submitting the vulnerability. So it's you get smaller amounts, but you get the reward sooner. And they also fix it faster because they have a whole triage team. They have their own process of doing it. But like with Microsoft, the highest bounty that I've ever earned was $10,000, and that was through or the highest single bounty I've ever earned is through Microsoft, and it was for $10,000. It was for getting escalating privileges within the Azure Active Directory domain services platform, which I
okay, yeah, I think I actually have that pulled up. So you're talking about, and this is a you published this through Secureworks. So is this the one you're talking about? The Azure Active Directory domain services privilege escalation, right? So this was your largest.
That was the largest bounty so far. Yeah.
Bounty reward. So far, yeah, of course. Okay, cool. So, I mean, I guess we might as well jump right into that then. Yeah. It'd be a good segue since we just kind of, touched on it. So, yeah, so this one is pretty interesting. So, do you just want to talk about, I guess, because you told me a little about it offline, but it's pretty involved, right?
Yeah.
So you just want to kind of walk me through this?
Absolutely, yeah. So Azure, GCP, AWS, they all have a product that is similar in nature. It's a domain services like Azure Active Directory domain services, but built in the cloud. And when you deploy local on-prem AD, you use the add users module to add accounts, and the DC acts as the identity provider and acts as the authority figure for who gets to log into what stuff, right? In Azure, GCP, AWS, they have a managed version of that where they deploy a domain controller to an environment that they control, and all of your cloud identities get synced into that domain controller. And the idea behind this is that you can deploy this environment and then deploy a Windows machine, Windows server, or a Linux system and connect it to the DC, and then run your on-prem applications in this environment by lifting and shifting the application from on-prem into the environment. And that way it still has the ability to interact with local AD accounts, right? What we found is that at the time, the domain controllers were vulnerable to the Petit Potem exploit. I forget exactly what the CVE is.
So, real quick, so just to clarify, is this kind of a domain controller in the cloud?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, got it.
It's actually two domain controllers that they get deployed. It's a primary and a secondary. They get deployed to the same environment, same thing, right? And so what we did is we used the Petit Potem code base. Petit Potem. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
We used that code base to coerce the NTLM v2 hash from DC1 to ourselves and relayed it to DC2 over secure LDAP, which allowed us to use delegated authority, or I think so, right? Kerberos, right? You basically create a machine account that has delegated access permissions over the secondary DC, but we have the Kerberos ticket, or the ability to get the Kerberos ticket and get the NTLM hash for any user on the DC through the added machine account. Basically what that allowed us to do is it allowed us to extract the NTLM hash for the domain controller's domain admin account, which is the DCAAS admin account, which is a Microsoft managed account. So we were able to get the NTLM hash from that, and then use that hash to perform a DC sync secret stump of the domain and extract all of the credentials from the DCs. What made it particularly damning is that when you deploy this environment, all of the cloud's identities become synced to this DC. All the NTLM hashes for the accounts, all the credentials for the accounts get synced to this domain controller. And so by exploiting this vulnerability, we were able to extract the hashes for all of the identities inside of the Azure AD sphere, right? And so in Azure AD, you could have like domain1.com, domain2.com, domain3.com, and have individual users for each of those domains. And by deploying this environment, you're syncing all of domain 1, 2, and 3 domains to the DC, and an attacker that could exploit this would be able to get the credentials for all of the users in all of the domains, regardless of their separation from each other.
This is amazing. So, I mean, this is really fascinating to me because, I mean, this is a relay attack in the cloud.
Yep.
Effectively, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is amazing. And I remember years ago, I was trying to figure out how to pull off some kind of a relay type attack in a hybrid environment, like between cloud and on-prem, you know,
Yeah.
and I never figured it out. So kudos on doing that, because it's something I was like, I wonder, you know, if it's possible, but at the time I couldn't figure it out. So I just think it's so cool that, I mean, first of all, you're attacking a DC in the cloud and performing a relay attack in the cloud. Like, that's amazing. And when one thing I want to ask about is, when you're doing this, where are you starting this attack from, right? Like, you're targeting the domain controllers. Where is your attacker box, your jump host, you know?
Yeah. So when you deploy the Azure Active Directory, now Entra ID domain services environment, you deploy it to a resource group, and that resource group has a shared network that it's connected to. So all you have to do is just deploy a Linux system to that shared network, and then SSH to the Linux box, and then you can attack from there.
Wow. That is amazing. That's really great. Wow, I love that. This is like combines so many. I know that there's going to be a lot of people who have done penetration testing against Active Directory, which, I mean, is like a whole field at this point, right? That are going to recognize a lot of stuff from this attack, right? I mean, it's like attacking AD like 101 when you talk about on-prem, right? But the fact that you figured all this out and put this all together in the cloud is amazing to me. And you know, the fact that because it's the cloud and because it's being used to manage all these domains, it's even better in a sense. You're getting you know, like you said, credentials, hashes for everyone, every domain, every user under that managed cloud environment, right? So that's incredible. So I know
I do want to
recognize. Go ahead.
I want to take a second to shout out Adam Logue from I don't know where he's at right now. He was we worked together on this project together, and we were able to figure this out together. I did not do this by myself.
Really?
Yeah, so we worked
Very cool. Yeah, I know Adam. Of course, we spent some time at the adversary group together. And I might have to bring him on as well.
Yeah.
He's a well-known car hacker and a bit of a crypto enthusiast and stuff like this. I really want to get him on to talk like hardware and stuff like that. So we're probably going to have Adam in the future. But I appreciate you giving him credit and a shout out here. That's awesome. So yeah, for sure. That's very cool. So just want to walk through a couple of these things real quick before we move on, just because I know people are going to recognize, people who have done penetration testing against AD are going to recognize a lot of this stuff, right? So, you know, you got an Nmap here looking for port 389, which is LDAP, right? Communications. And, you know, this is classic. I love this. Looking at etsyresolve.conf to find your name servers. That when I found out about that, that I could do that once I had a jump box into an environment, that was always one of my favorites go to. This is another classic, using this NS lookup query to find, you know, domain controllers, petit podum. Again, I don't know how to say it either. but excellent tool. I'm sure people who have attacked AD are familiar with. NTLM Relay X is like legendary.
Absolutely.
Right. In-packet tools, Secret Stomp. These are all like, legendary tools that are used to attack AD. And I just love Crack Map Exact. I just love that you were able to use all these in the cloud in a hybrid environment. I think that's so cool. And one more thing that I wanted to highlight on this is this has been fixed, right? It says
Correct.
Microsoft released an update January, looks like 2023. So this exact chain should be fixed.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. This exact chain is no longer possible. We did some like regression testing kind of with MSRC.
Okay.
We submitted the vulnerability. They were like, hey, this is a problem. Here's our fix. Can you test the fix? We went ahead and tested the fix and tried to be creative and find is around that.
Yeah, to see if that fix was incomplete. Sure.
And then let them know like, hey, by the way, if you do this over here, you can still exploit it because it's not connected properly. And then they were able to fix it through that process. So as of right now, this representation of a vulnerability does not exist anymore. But that environment is a hardened environment, but is a great place for other researchers to do research in. And if you're able to compromise that environment, it is a highly critical, highly sensitive environment that has to do that literally all of the accounts in the cloud their credentials are stored on that DC. So if you can compromise that, it's pretty much game over for the whole organization.
Great. Yeah, that's a great note. And I love the turnaround time here. It looks like it was submitted December 20 and released an update January 27th.
Absolutely.
So just over a month. That's quick in my experience, especially for something like this, right?
Yeah.
So that's very cool. And the fact that you worked with them on the fix and to make it a really robust fix, I love that. So very cool. Mad props on that. That is a really awesome exploitation chain and discovery. So, yeah, very cool. And another one that I think we could probably cover a little more quickly is more recent. This is, I think, your latest blog on Secureworks. And this is about an Azure redirect URI takeover vulnerability. And this one is particularly interesting to me because it involves abusing OAuth 2.0 flow, right? Or implementation. And I'm not gonna, there's anybody who wants to go check this out. I highly recommend that you go and check out the write-ups on these, especially this one. I think that again, this one's already been reported. It's been, I assume there's been a fix pushed. I haven't scrolled down here, but well, maybe this is kind of more just like an issue of like a misconfig or an implementation issue, right? So maybe there's not a patch in this case.
Correct.
Right? It's just kind of like you need to know about this and make sure you don't set up your environment in a way that it's possible. Is that accurate?
That's exactly accurate. Yep.
Okay, great. So this is great information for researchers to have so that they can go look for these kinds of configurations that may be vulnerable, right? And as well for people on the defensive side, I think, that could go and review their environments and make sure that this isn't possible in their own environment, right? So definitely something that I highly recommend people go check out. This is posted on Secureworks site. It's the Azure redirect URI takeover vulnerability. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because there is some other stuff that I want to get to with you, but it deals with OAuth 2.0 flow. There's really great information here to explain how all this works. And I know I dug into this some myself in a different environment. And it took me a little while to understand how OAuth 2.0, how the flow works in this scenario. Yeah. So I think it would be really helpful for people to go and read this and get up to speed on how this flow actually works. So that they can go and look for ways to exploit it and look for issues in their own environments, right? So can you just give me kind of like a quick summary of what the exploitation, how it works on
Yeah.
this one?
So an organization creates an application, and they create the application in their Azure AD Enter ID app registration page, right? Part of that
Okay.
process is configuring redirect URIs or URLs that would receive an authorization code if a user logs in.
And are those redirect URIs, they're meant to be pointed at like an IDP, right? Like
they can be IDP, they can also be localhost, it can be
right.
there's variation in what it can be.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
the idea being here is that a user will attempt to log into the application, and the application will receive the user's credentials and verify the credentials. If the credentials are valid, the application or the application will send uh, the user an authorization code, and that authorization code is then used to access the application or gain an access token for a a Microsoft Graph or Azure Resource Manager Graph or what have you, right?
Sure.
And so what from what I can tell in this situation is that when you deploy the application and you deploy the app web services URL, or the web server that would handle the authorization code flow,
Yeah.
you might deploy it in a resource group that for whatever reason gets deleted or is part of another thing that gets removed of some way, right? So you might have an application that has 10 redirect URIs. One of those redirect URIs are in some random resource group, and somebody accidentally deleted that resource group,
Or it
and
gets
now
deprecated or whatever, right?
yeah. So now that URL, the redirect URI that was here that's now deleted, it's gone and is now claimable by an attacker. So an attacker can come in and claim that URL, deploy their own malicious code, or basically deploy their own authorization code flow application where
Right.
they can send your
Intercept those
users.
codes, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They can send your users login requests. They log in with what they believe is the application. And the
Right.
application would send them the authorization code where they could exchange it for an access token or access to the application itself.
Right.
And that's what
So in this case, this involved like a subdomain takeover.
exactly. Yep.
You're essentially utilizing a subdomain or URI that is already in place that is no longer in use. Like you said, maybe it's been deleted, deprecated, whatever. It's use anymore. You take over that subdomain or that particular URI, and now you can deploy your own asset there to intercept those tokens.
Yep.
Awesome. I want to point out too that this would work in a similar manner if for some reason the attacker was to gain access to edit the application itself or the application properties, where you could add a redirect URI or modify a redirect URI.
Absolutely.
Right. And just point it at, your own asset. So interesting. I think there's still some things to explore here.
Absolutely.
And definitely some things for organizations who are using these kind of applications to go and take a look at and make sure, hey, do we have any old redirect URIs defined in these applications that are no longer in use, subdomain that we no longer own, that somebody else could take over, right? I think there's definitely some stuff for organizations to take a look at here, make sure that they're not vulnerable, right?
In that article, at the very bottom of the article, there's a bash script that has AZ CLI commands in it. And basically what it does is says, list me all of my and then list me all the redirect URIs, and then strip the URL schema and the URI piece, the like the folders and the files and all that, and just give me the host name. And then it does a DNS lookup on all of the redirect URI host names. And if any of them come back without an A record, then it's something to investigate.
That's amazing. So you've already provided a script right in this blog that people can go and run against their own environments to identify if they have any, let's say, redirect URIs that are potentially vulnerable to this attack.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's awesome. That's excellent. I love that because, again, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this in the past, and we've had conversations about this where I was like, I just want to own things.
Yeah.
I just want to hack things. I don't give a crap about, fixing, but that's important, right? I mean, that's what gives us a career, first of all, and what really helps the community. And that's something that I've come around from my old just straight up hacker mentality. I just want to break things and own things to, hey, I've gotten a lot from this community and I want to give back.
Absolutely.
Right. And I want to give back to the community. So I love that you're doing this in a way, reporting it in a way that you're helping people out, not just other hackers and red teams and stuff like that, but actively helping organizations defend themselves against these attacks. Right. So that's awesome. Yeah, definitely anybody who, is using these kinds of applications, is using OAuth 2.0 flow with applications, definitely go check this out. Get the script. If it applies to your environment, take a look at these redirect URIs, make sure you're not vulnerable. That's excellent information. Another thing I want to jump into here is your personal blog.
Absolutely.
So if anybody, I highly recommend following Tony. Larcher-Gore is your handle, right? You've been putting out phenomenal research here now for years. On Azure and on like you said, GCP. I see an article about GCP here. I see some stuff about DC Sync. We got some stuff automating with ChatGPT, which is, something that really I got into and I love. So, you got tons of awesome stuff here for red teamers and blue teamers alike to go and learn about. So, highly recommend your blog. Is there anything that you anything else you want to mention here about places where people can follow your research or anything like that?
So when I submit a blog or do work that's going to show up on the Secureworks website, I'll always take the Secureworks blog and my blog and post it on Twitter. Larcher-Gore is my handle. You can reach me at x.com/Larcher-Gore. O is a 0. And that's how you get me.
Awesome. And then same thing, your blog here is your handle, Larcher-Gore.
Correct.
Is the O is a 0. .com, and just like I said, phenomenal research, and I believe these are excellent images, by the way. And I think that you mentioned to me that these were all AI generated.
That's correct. Yeah.
Which very cool. I love it. I got to get better personally at generating AI images, so that's something I'm going to go work on. But I love this. I mean, your blog looks great. I love the design and everything about this, and definitely something that I'm going to be checking out. And I highly recommend that people keep up with, because you're always putting out cutting edge, research. So very cool. And I will, with that, bring us back to here. So not sharing that screen anymore. And I wanted to touch on a few more things here about specifically, how you do all this, right? I mean, you're doing amazing work. You're doing, it's really 0-day research, right? I know a lot of times that term doesn't get applied to like cloud vulnerabilities for whatever reason. A lot of times when people talk about O days or dropping a 0-day or something, it's, endpoint exploitation, right? Or a specific piece of software. But obviously, the the couple of blogs we went over, those attack chains, I mean, they were 0-day. They were unknown publicly at the time that you discovered them, right? So you're doing 0-day research, like on a regular basis. When you're doing that, I know for me personally, I do a lot of malware development these days. I still do 0-day research, but a lot of what I'm doing is focused on programming and malware development. And one of the things that I find that I still struggle with, that, I'd like to get your perspective is like, I'll get tunnel vision, right? I mean, especially when I'm writing code, especially when I'm writing malware, because I always think it's almost there. Right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, I always feel like it's just around the corner. I'm just around the corner from this exploit working, or this code being debugged and compiling and working the way I want it to, or whatever it is, right? And I personally, I get tunnel vision really bad. And one of the classic jokes, with my wife, and I think I've seen memes posted about it on even like Twitter, is like, I'll say, oh, hey, honey, I've got an idea. I'll be right back. This just take a minute, right? And then it's like several hours later,
Yeah.
I'm at my desk, like hunched over, and my wife is like, "Are you gonna eat? Like, are you gonna come to bed?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, just a minute or whatever." And then a lot of times, like I'll spend a whole day on something. If I think I've got something really good, especially like that's the worst part too. Like with 0-day research, it's even worse because you're so excited about it that nobody's done this before. It's not, you can search generate, you can't find it, the thing that you're trying to do. It's so exciting that it's very easy for me to lose like a whole day
Absolutely.
on something like this. And then I like at the end, I'm like, either I got it or I got to put it down. I got to work on it later. And then I go, wait a minute. I have neglected
my whole family, my whole life,
everything else about my life, right? Like I have to reschedule a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
I need to go like read to my kids and like spend time with my family and all this stuff. Like it's very easy to lose a lot of time. And how do you deal with that? How do you try to manage that in a way that hacking 0-day research doesn't destroy the rest of your life, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things, so exercise and diet, obviously the healthier you are, the easier it is for you to deal with stress and deal with getting sucked into work. And but the other piece of it too is respecting your boundaries for your things. If it's hard, but if your family is important to you, then you need to set time aside to spend time with them and to go do things outside of work and computers and ones and zeros and all this other stuff, right? And one of the things that I've been doing recently, my wife and I, is we have an agreement that throughout the week, on like Mondays and Wednesdays, I can work as much as I want. Tuesdays, she's got classes she's got to go to. She's got stuff she's got to go to. So I'm at home with the kids, not doing work stuff. I'm playing video games with my daughter or watching TV with my son or whatever the case may be. And then Saturday seems to be our like boundary day. Nothing work related happens on Saturday, and I take the entire day to just decompress. I try to leave the house for half the day, spend time with my parents, go to the mall, go to a park or something. I don't know, but go do something outside of the house, away from the computer, and spend it with my family. My family knows that the reason why I bug hunt on 7 platforms at a time throughout the year is because I'm trying to take care of them, and I'm trying to make sure that they have everything they need to succeed. And they know that in order for me to do that, I need to get that space between my focus and my mental health. And so we try to put in that boundary of that space throughout the week, right? So Saturday is our day to do whatever we want. We as a family will go out to, the middle of nowhere, or we'll go in towards the city, or we'll go downtown, or we'll do something on Saturday. And then throughout the week, it's like, my wife's got a class, or my daughter's got a class, or my son's got a class, or something is going on. So work until you have to stop, and then respect that boundary of putting work down and walking away. And I struggle with that myself. It is something that I find hard to do, especially like this. I've been awake since 1:00 this morning because I'm working on potential 0 day right now, and I'm excited about it, but I need to get that, the work done. But this weekend, I'm not planning on doing anything. I'm planning on spending time with my family out at some trampoline park or something, and we're going to go find something to do this weekend. So that's my advice.
That's great. I love that. That's really great. I mean, honestly, I guess I kind of have been doing some of that a little less structured, right? I try to keep my weekend free from work, right? I try, and I think I even mentioned to you when we were talking about scheduling this, I was like, well, let's schedule during the week. I try to keep my weekends
Yeah, right.
separate, right? Even from this. Yeah, I think that's important, but even, I struggle with that. Honestly, I'm guilty of getting up on a Saturday morning, and if everybody's sleeping in, I'm like, maybe I'll sneak over here and write some code real quick, and then suddenly I've like missed breakfast, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" So it is difficult, I think. But yeah, I mean, your point about having boundaries, and I love the way that you've structured it, where you have like kind of a schedule. You're like, on these days, this is what happens. On these days, this is what happens. That's definitely something I'm going to incorporate more, is, because I've been doing it kind of unstructured, and it's too easy to get away from your plan when it's unstructured like that. So I really like that. And it's hard though, right? If it's Friday night and you feel like you're right on the edge of finishing some research, especially if you think you're going to get paid for it, right? Like you talked about earlier, you've got a 10 grand bounty before. If you feel like on Friday night at midnight, 1 a.m., you're on the verge of completing this exploit chain that you think you're going to get paid 10 grand, right? That is really hard to not stay up till 4 a.m. to try to finish that. When I got to get up tomorrow, I got to go do this stuff with my family. But it's hard, right? I mean, it's hard to balance, because at the same time, you're like, it's like something I do for my family too, because I get paid. Very tough, but I do think it's so important to have those boundaries and stick to them, and something that this year for me personally is one of my like things I want to work on with myself for this year, right? Is being more strict with myself with those boundaries, so that even though it's Friday night, I'm so close, I got to be able to set it down until Monday or whatever, right? Or whenever my next time is that I've given myself to work on that stuff. So just something that I thought I think everybody in our space could benefit from hearing that more about, right? Because I think we all struggle with it, and everybody's familiar with the kind of,
it's the culture too. It's like
I mean, it's
OSCP, 24-hour tests, 48-hour tests, 72-hour tests. Like it's the culture too. It's
some of it is definitely built in to the industry and to the culture, and it can be tough to honor your boundaries when you feel like the industry or the broader culture is demanding something else from you, right? That could be really hard, but I think that's a matter of like making sure that you get yourself into a situation if you can, or if you're not right now, working toward placing yourself in a situation where you have more control over those boundaries, right? And if that means changing jobs, if that means changing your area of focus, right? Maybe maybe you're tired of working in the SOC, right? And working a queue, and you're thinking, well, how do I get away from this, right? And maybe you start looking at specializing as a researcher or a reverse engineer, or maybe you decide to go offense. I think that it's important to recognize when you're in a situation that prevents you from adhering to those boundaries and taking care of your life outside of work or the industry or bug bounty or whatever, to focus on, okay, I need a plan to change this situation, right? Like, this is not going to work for me long term. This is damaging in some way to my life. And that would apply, I think, to all kinds of other fields as well, right? There's lots of demanding fields in that way. I mean, we've been in the military, and that's a huge challenge in the military. And sometimes, I've been deployed, right? And I didn't have kids at the time. I remember how stressful it was for my chief, who had young kids, and other people around me who had kids back home. And I can't imagine now. That's really tough. And my hats go off to those people who are doing that job, who have to be deployed away from their family for long periods of time, because that's really hard. And sometimes you make that sacrifice, right? But I think that it's important, especially for people like ourselves who have a military background. I think it's easy for us to justify sacrificing something in our lives for our work, because we were trained to do that for the military, right? And so it's easy for us to go, well, this is important, I can make this sacrifice. But it's not the military, right? And I think it's important for people to have that military background to be able to make that distinction and say, this is not, I'm not deployed. This is not the military. Should I be making this sacrifice? Maybe I have the ability to make a change. So just want to put that out there. I know there's a lot of people that probably struggle with that, as it's a challenge for us, but I think it's really important for people in the space to avoid burnout, avoid developing mental health issues, and sacrificing even your physical health, right? If you're neglecting yourself or your family for your work, it's just not great, right? You got to find a way to make it work. And I know it's hard, but I think it's something we all have to work on as a broader culture.
Yeah.
Right? Just something I want to bring up. So, what I guess is, what's up next? We've talked about your background, your history. We've talked about your latest research. I know you can't talk about specific zero-day research that you're working on right now. Of course, we respect responsible disclosure and all that. But kind of, what are you thinking? Are you someone who, like, I've met people that it's like, I'm a security engineer forever. I don't want to be a manager or whatever. Then other people, they're cool with becoming a manager, becoming a director, mentoring others in the space, and maybe getting not so much hands on keyboard, right? Are kind of, where do you fit in there? Do you see yourself doing zero-day research for a long time, writing exploits for a long time? I guess kind of what do you see? What's next for you?
I think for now, I'm happy with my current situation, right? My day job is to go hunt for vulnerabilities in Microsoft products and write reports and get to go do stuff like this. And this is where I want to be right now. Maybe 10, 15 years down the road, I might go to management or I might go somewhere else. But I think right now I'm happy where I'm at.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, seems like you're a hacker at heart, kind of like myself. We enjoy that part of it, right? For me, it's doing this professionally is something that I'm glad I can do because I love doing this stuff, right? It's a job, but it's not just a job, right? It's something that I actually enjoy doing, and it sounds like that's a similar scenario for you. So I'm happy to hear that. Happy to hear that you enjoy your work, and I'm glad that it's available within the industry and for you over at Secureworks and on these different bug bounty platforms. And I love the fact that Microsoft takes these submissions and pays bounties and gives recognition, all this stuff, because I'm a little older. I remember when it was not that way, and it was hacking was extremely frowned upon, and Microsoft was not interested in paying money to hackers to hack them. Right? That is just something that I'm amazed at how far we've come in the industry, in the space, as a hacker collective to get here. I just love so much that is the case. And I want to give, kudos to all the different organizations that have kind of come around to that way of thinking and want to encourage, more to do so. I just think it's the best case scenario. And I think I'm glad that we kind of ended up here versus trying to like squash it.
Right. Yeah.
And all this. Right. So very thankful for things like bug bounty, open source, community and all these things. So is there anything else that you want to bring up, Tony? You've spent a ton of time going over stuff with us here. Is there anything else that you want to touch on? Any advice that you have for people who are either trying to get into the industry, trying to learn bug hunting, or trying to find a job? Like
start small and then work your way up. A lot of people get they want to know, they go into hacking going, I'm going to be the best hacker ever, and it's a lot bigger than what they expect it to be, and they get frustrated and give up. And just start small and work your way out, and you'll do great things as the time goes by.
Yeah, I think that's great. One thing I've been telling myself lately is to focus on the progress, not the endpoint.
Yeah.
Right. So every day, if I make a little bit of progress towards that goal, I feel good about that. I can feel good about making iterative progress, and I'm going to get to that goal. Right. But I think focusing on the goal, it can be tough, right? Because maybe you have a large project you're working on, it takes a long time, and it can wear you down because you're just looking at that end result. But I think focusing on that, on small progress along the way, at least for me, I feel good. If I make just a little bit of progress every day, besides the weekend, then I can feel good about that, and that helps me. So great advice. Well, Tony, thank you so much for coming. You have been fantastic. It's great to talk to you. I think you're a phenomenal researcher. Again, encourage everybody to keep up with you on Twitter, on your blog, keep up with Secureworks blog. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
To an end, to an end, to an end.